You're live right now. Okay.
Okay.
Shalom, everyone. Sit tight. Okay. We don't do live beatbox here. I do love this episode. Controversial issues it's just really cool. I dig it. Rabbi Chaim, Coffman. Beautimus. Okay, perfect. Let's just see if all my stuff works well. I know you guys can hear me, but hey, this is live stream. This is what we do, right? All right. I don't know how I ever did this before. That's just too many buttons to push at the same time. Welcome to TORAH Talk. I'm your host, William Hall, broadcasting live out of Kingsland, Texas, USA, with episode number 5 of Controversial Issues with the crazy rabbi from Israel, sticking dynamite on no caffeine, Rabbi Chaim Coffman. Tonight's... Where's my note? Tonight's interesting hot topic follow-up, of course, is going to be Kabbalah and Reincarnation, practical ramifications. And so, Rabbi, thanks again for not going AWOL on me. I know you have plenty of opportunities to do that, but you know you can't.
Did before. Come on.
But you know you like it here. I know you just told me a few minutes ago you really enjoy the music, so that's good. Hopefully, that's not the only reason you're here.
One of them, not all of them.
Hey, do me a mic check again, real fast.
Check.
Okay, we're good. Okay, perfect. So last week we had see, I'm hearing myself check. Hang on. Check 1, 2. Check testing. Okay, last week we had a really interesting episode on Kabbalah and reincarnation. It's something that makes a lot of people very uncomfortable. However, it's information that they need to know, and I would not want my viewers to get it from anywhere outside of an orthodox source, and you're the only guy crazy enough to address these things. So, and I love you for that. Thank you. This is really good. So again, thank you all for tuning in. The phone lines, if I'm not mistaken, let me pause the music so I don't freak out the phone system. Okay, the phone lines are open. I'll put that number up in just a few minutes. 855-95-BIBLE if you have an old-style push-button phone that actually has the alphabet on it as well. 855-952-4253 is the number you want to call. The number is on your screen. If please, when you call, keep your questions or comments related to tonight's topic. If you have a new topic idea, send me an email to knocktalkquestions@gmail.com, and please put in the memo, or is that what they call it, the memo section of the notes, whatever. Just put on there either Coffman or controversial. That way I know what it's for. Get flooded with lots of emails, so I need to have some sort of notes so I can filter through them quite easily. So. With all that said, so Rabbi, if you don't mind, if you would please, let's go back a little bit from last week. Just do a quick 2 minutes. I'm timing you, so I actually installed a cyber shocker on your chair. If you okay, so let's go back a little bit and talk a little bit about what we discussed last week, and kind of lead us into where we're headed this week with the practical ramifications of the whole reincarnation thing. I mean, we it's obviously, we're not going to be wind up biting people if we were a dog in our past life, but there's a lot of curious viewers out here who want to know more. Okay.
Very good. So we'll just go back a little bit. We mentioned last week that a person's a mixture, body and soul. Is a hybrid, right? The soul comes in the body. The soul comes from the world of souls, whatever that means, and comes from God Himself. He breathed in the life of a person. So He gave its ability to make decisions. You can make good decisions. You can make bad decisions. And whatever we do, in this world, as we're doing right now, is recorded. There are, 2 angels that see everything, everything you do and how you did things and why you did things. And the good thing is that we only get judged according to where we're holding right now. Not what our future potential is, but actually where we're holding right now. So the reality is that we learn this out from none other than Yishmael and the story of Hagar, which we also mentioned. So then, after a person dies, after 120 years, these angels are going to give testimony to what a person did, and person's going to have to go through rectification, right? He's going to have to go through hell to hopefully fix up the terrible things that the person did. And basically, what we ended with is that God is going to judge that person for what they did, and if they don't get enough, rectification, in order to get into Gan Eden, to paradise, to the Garden of Eden, where the soul waits, until resurrection, because it can't reach its really full potential until resurrection. So nonetheless, it's going to wait there, until that point. If it doesn't get there, which probably we are all reincarnated souls, we can come back maybe 3 times, 4 times. Maximum, this probably isn't our first time here. And that being said, that God can, throw back the soul into any number of things, into a person, into a rock, into, whatever it is, which we'll speak about further in these practical ramifications, and God can send that soul back to this world because it didn't fulfill the mission that it was supposed to when it was here. And that's also an important thing I forgot to leave out, that every soul that comes into the world, right, every person has their own perfection that they have to reach, their own goals, and instead of their own mission, really. So if they don't reach that mission, and they fail, so then there's tremendous potential of actually coming back. So I think that's a good.
Now I have to ask you a question. I've got to throw something out there. I think that's probably pretty critical for people to, at least to question, even if they don't ask. This is something that needs to be asked. When we think about the whole idea of reincarnation, it's not like my mind and my psyche, my memory. It's the soul that's completely detached from both. Is that correct?
Right. Yeah.
So in other words, we had a great question last week from Ray. Oh my gosh. We had several questions. Actually, several came in through email. I forget who asked what. One of them was asked. The question was, I've had memories, or I've had dreams of like a past life, right? And so
someone called in, right? Someone called in and asked about that, about dreams.
Yes, she's going to slap me. If she was sitting in the room with me, she'd probably slap me and say, I cannot believe you forgot my name.
Julie, come on.
It actually was Julie.
Elephant.
Yeah, that's good. But it was a really great question. I mean, the whole, and it's one of these questions that really, it definitely keeps you up at night. I mean, like I said before, I've had dreams before that were associated with movies that I watched when I was a kid.
Right.
But if I actually had something where I felt like this was a reoccurring thing, that would actually get to me. But from what I understand, it's not that your mind and your memories, like right now, for example, let's say that my body was the very first time that my neshama was created, and it just came into William Hall. I die at 135 years old. Yes. But I didn't accomplish everything, right? So I come back again. Whatever my neshama comes back at, whatever physical body, whatever car this neshama is driving, is not going to have the memories that I had. It's weird. I mean, explain a little bit about that.
It's like when you start this show, what happens? You start from nothing. Right? You're going to record, and it's going to record, a totally different thing. If we play this out 10 times, it's always going to come out different, right? It's not going to be the same, just because of who I am. But in general, those memories are not going to be there. According to Kabbalah, those memories will not be there.
Okay.
Now you bring up this thing. Well, what about you're standing somewhere, and all of a sudden you say, "Wait a minute!" Like, you have that deja vu moment.
Dude,
like
you
that,
called
right?
it. We're going there next. Before you go too far, we're hitting deja vu. You just mentioned it.
All right.
Okay.
So you have that moment, and you say, "Wait, wasn't I here before?" You feel something, right? But according to many, it doesn't seem like that's from a past life. According to Kabbalah, it's straight. It's what I understand, and I had this clarified. by someone much bigger than me, and that is that you will never ever remember what happened in a past life. You won't remember, right? Past experiences.
Okay.
Right? Flashbacks, other things. It's definitely not a Jewish concept, no question. No question about that. The issue is though, is that if you, let's say, like in that case, you feel something, right? Your soul definitely feels something. So there are people that their souls are, let's say, extra sensitive. So they can feel something possibly outside themselves. Now they get, if they sense that doesn't mean that it's not a reality. But at the same time, it's not necessarily going to be, this past life experience. I'll give an example. You take somebody that's autistic, right? Someone who's autistic where they've done a lot of facilitation over the years, and they sense things that we can't. They're a messed up body with the soul inside. The soul had to come back into this messed up body, which, we'll speak about. And the soul will come back, but the soul is so sensitive, it sees God's presence, sees all these things that we can't see in a body. So what it sees and what it senses is here and now.
Not before.
It's not something in the past. It's not something.
Okay.
It's not something like, oh yeah, I remember I used to do this. Let's do a 360 in the driveway. Well, I can't. I'm in a messed up body.
Right.
I can't do that. It's only really, present time. Maybe you can hear some things going on upstairs, some, conversation of what might be in the future, but it's certainly not in the past. It's only here, it's only here in the present. So deja vu could be your soul senses something. It could be something here. It's not going to be something in the past. It's, oh yeah, that's the answer to that third grade test. I didn't do well on. That's not going to be. I also mentioned there was this book that was written a number of years ago by this guy named Brian Weiss, who wrote this book on Many Masters, Many Lives, and he put people under deep hypnosis, and they were talking about past life experiences. So I showed it to someone very much steeped in Kabbalah, and he said, after reading it, that there are a lot of things in there. None of it really has to do with Judaism. It's all about Hinduism, Buddhism, and other type of things. But this rabbi told me, clear as day, according to Kabbalah, that can't happen.
Okay.
So you can have a sixth sense in a certain way that you can, your soul. There are people that their souls are much more sensitive, and they can sense, maybe other souls around, different things. That's a real thing. I won't say it's so common, per se, but it's not something in the past. Okay. They're not, it's not a bad Freddy Krueger movie where, they're going back in dreams, like, oh yeah, I forgot to do this, or Back to the Future and going in the past and trying to fix the future, like, that within Judaism doesn't exist. It's the present tense right now. So you're gonna ask, so you ask, I know, with that funny hat, you're gonna ask, so what about now? What about what I felt now? Isn't that from the past? It's not from the past. It's something, it's something that your soul senses. That's true. That's very true. But, that flashback from a past experience, again, as far as I understand and was explained to me, that can't happen.
Okay.
Within Judaism, that can't happen.
What comprises the human experience? Mind, body, thoughts, what?
The body is just the casing for the soul. Right, as you mentioned before, when the soul goes in, the Ramchal says in Derech Hashem, in the way of God, the Ramchal says that when the soul goes in, the soul comes from this soul world. The soul is so powerful, right? Because it's coming from God Himself. That soul should totally destroy the body. That's what really should happen. But what happens? The body is like kryptonite, and it traps the soul, so the soul can't shine. The only way the soul can shine in this world is by doing Torah mitzvahs. And had Adam done what he was supposed to do, in other words, if his soul would have expanded gradually by doing the right thing and constantly doing the right thing, basically his body would have exploded and he would have walked straight into the Garden of Eden. That would have been the end of everything.
Okay, so our human experience is basically is comprised of three things, right? The mind, the soul, and the body. Is that it, or is there four things?
I don't know. I mean, mind for sure, because of what do and how it affects us, which definitely is going to affect the soul.
Okay.
The body definitely affects because the body's physical, and wants to trap the soul and only go after the physical things in this universe. That's one of our aspects of our soul, what they call the nefesh behemoth, the soul of an animal. Like we do things like animal does.
And that's nefesh, right?
That's the
nefesh and neshama are two different things. One is the animalistic soul.
Everybody has the nefesh. Not everybody has the neshama. There are three other aspects of the soul as well. But so that's the second thing. And what did you say? Body, mind.
And the soul.
So the mind.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the mind is what we experience.
Okay.
So what we experience definitely has an effect on the soul. So this is really relatively easy to understand. This is even before Kabbalah 101. This is like 52 or even lower. When a person sees certain images, in certain things, it affects him. And it can affect him negatively.
Right.
There's one easy example is you see what goes on in the world, that we live in a consumer society. So we're bombarded with billboards, advertising. Today, used to be a person had a time span of where they could hold a conversation for like 6 minutes, right? That was like the time of a commercial. Now the commercials are just like this. They're just images, because the person, person just can't sit still, right? So you have to DVR and you're watching 4 things at once. You're like, you're looking all over the place. And you're like, wait, I just missed that. Wait, let's go back. So what happens is these things affect them. So if a person prays and you want to raise yourself to a higher spiritual level, imagine if you have negative thoughts, right? If you see things that we shouldn't have seen, so our mind gets clouded with all these things. And when we begin to pray and we want to tap into the spiritual, the physical doesn't allow us. It's something that you have to work like a dog to get out of your system, because all these images come into your mind. So I'll tell you even a scarier thought. And the scarier thought is that it's brought down that if a person prays, if he says the Shemona Esrei, there are 19 blessings that a Jew says, that we ask for parnasa, for livelihood, for health, we ask for knowledge, all these different things. It's 19 blessings. You're standing there trying to have as much concentration as possible. What happens if negative thoughts come in your mind? You're thinking you're somewhere else. You're thinking about business. You're thinking about it's crazy music on TORAH Talk. Like all these different things come into your mind. So what happens? So it's brought down that if you weren't open yourself up to transgression, these thoughts that take you away from Torah wouldn't enter your mind while you're praying.
I need to tell you something. Because this last year probably has been the most amazing year for me learning wise. I heard something right along line with what you're saying here. I believe Rabbi Friedman had mentioned something in he talks a lot about this topic, but I'm not sure where the source came from. But the idea that I had heard was, the way you think during the process of what you're doing will either bless that event or it will curse that event. Whether it's prayer, whether it's making love with your wife, whatever the case may be, whether it be a business transaction, whatever the case may be, how holy you are thinking and approaching every single event will determine the outcome of that event. And I personally have experienced that with my work. There's been a couple situations where I just wasn't at the top of my game, and I was just, I don't know, my mind was not where it was supposed to be. I'll just leave it there. And sure enough, those jobs just, they either, somehow I never heard back from them when I was done, or maybe they went a little sour or something over the past 10 years. And I'm noticing a pattern, and it's real. I mean, this is no joke. So how much more should we be accountable of all things, especially when we pray?
Right. I mean, prayer, you make blessings, all these things we are affected by. I mean, somebody who on a regular day makes blessings, right, over fruit, vegetables, whatever it is, it's a common thing. It shouldn't be, but it's a common thing. Someone will say, "Did I just make that after blessing? Did I bench? Did I take grace after meals? Did I?" It's not because, it's not because, they are, they're not doing what they're supposed to do or whatever. They're just, it's a concentration thing. How could you forget? You made a blessing. Isn't that obvious? Did you make it? So what happens is our minds race so fast that we're in 10 different directions and we're still sitting in the same place.
Right. Completely agreed.
I'll tell you what, one other scary thing that my Rebbe brings down. He says that, so we're coming closer to Yom Kippur. So when it comes to repentance, for instance, that the Rambam has 10 chapters of the laws of repentance. So there's a custom to learn a chapter a day between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, because there are 10 days of repentance that start from Rosh Hashanah. So he goes to the beginning about where the mitzvah of tshuva, of repentance, comes from. So he brings down from the Vilna Gaon, who he's descended from Elijah of Vilna, great rabbi of the last 250 years, and he says the following. He says that a person can never transgress. You could never ever transgress by doing something by accident, had you not done something on purpose.
Well, express that. What do you mean?
In other words, if somebody, we have all these things that we need to do, right? All the, Jews and non-Jews, we have all these things that we need to do to be closer to God. If you do something that rebels against God on purpose, right? Let's say, whatever it is, God forbid, somebody killed someone, you stole from someone, it's premeditated, right? You fill in the transgression. Whatever that transgression is that was done, that was premeditated, that means that you could do something by accident. Why? Why? Because you just opened yourself up to be a vessel of transgression.
Whoa, that's huge.
Since you've done that on purpose, doesn't matter what it is.
Oh, man.
Since you've done it on purpose, that means that, say, how could I have, I wasn't paying attention and I rubbed up against the wall. On Shabbos, I turned off the light. You know what?
I
turned it off.
I have to comment on here. This is so incredibly, amazingly amazing. I've always been one just to give you an example. I've always been one to watch my mouth, not say anything that was even remotely, a cuss word or anything like that. And somehow or another in the past 6 months, through whatever reasons you could say, while I'm at work, hit my thumb with the hammer and say, holy, nothing holy, I'll promise you. But you say this, and then next thing you know, another week passes and something happens and some guy cuts me off, and it made it easier next to say another cuss word. And then 3 or 4 weeks later, it's like within that amount of time, you're slipping up more and more and more. And it's like, now it's like I've got to be really careful, because I even when I did the testimony for TORAH Talk about 2 months ago, I'm still puzzled. Maybe I did say a cuss word. I don't think I did, but it's very possible that I did, and it very well could be because I subjected myself to opening up to that. And it's very true.
We're going to be surprised later, right? When God plays back this video.
Oh my gosh, yes.
We're like, hey, I didn't do that. To say, wait a minute, is that you?
Right.
That's not me, that's him.
Okay, now before you go any further, we need to backtrack a little bit. Okay, so we have the mind, the soul, and the body. Reincarnation has nothing to do, and correct me if I'm wrong, Rabbi, I'm talking to the viewers now, has absolutely nothing to do with your mind, anything you remember, or with your body. It's strictly your soul. Is a completely different part of you.
It is with the soul, but keep in mind, everything that the soul did, what it heard, what it said, through the body.
But it's detached from the mind.
Right. But the soul is everything that.
Okay.
What runs the mind? It's the soul.
Yeah. Right.
It's not the body. I mean, the body's just the casing.
Okay.
That's why God's going to judge body and soul together, because the body's going to say, "What do you want from me? I didn't do anything wrong. Right. I can't do anything without the soul." And the soul's going to say, "What do you want from me? You can't punish me."
Well, isn't it possible isn't it possible, if that's the case, if they're that tightly connected, isn't it possible for 1 out of 100 or 1 out of 1,000 souls to actually experience a memory glitch?
Why? Why should that be?
I don't know. I'm just saying, because you said that they're so directly connected, the mind and the soul.
No, but again, the body's just like a rock. It's just holding the soul.
It's like a car. You get in your car.
A car is a good example,
yeah,
right?
Okay.
It's like a car, but at the same time, you have to keep in mind that God's gonna say, well, you soul went in the body, so the body can't do anything with the soul without the soul. The soul can't do anything without the body. So God says, oh yeah, that's a great idea. I'm going to slap you both together, and I'm going to judge you.
Okay,
right. And I'm going to judge you. So that's why body and soul,
okay,
have to get judged together.
Okay, let me jump in again. Okay, now I want you to go, just take a few minutes, 10 minutes, an hour, 2 days, I don't care. Deja vu. Hit me with your best shot on the whole deja vu concept.
Deja vu is, you're not going to like this. It's not really a Jewish concept at all. It's not, we mentioned before, I did sort of allude to it or actually said it, that when it comes to deja vu, it's not, you're standing somewhere and now, now all of a sudden you feel something. Now, your soul can be sensitive. That is true. It can be sensitive to a number of things. Some souls are more sensitive, some less. Whatever the case is, you can definitely sense, maybe different things. Is that from a past life experience? Again, according to Kabbalah, it's an impossibility. The soul, when the soul comes back in the body, remember, God puts the soul into the body, and He puts it into the body that God feels that this body is going to help this soul reach its true potential. Well, blew it the first time, right? So you're going to put it in another body, right? It's going to, it's going to have the same mission, but it's going to go in another body. Now, when it goes in that body is empty. It's empty. There's nothing there. There's no pre-written, instructions. Go find the treasure under someone's, someone's house.
Right.
You're not given any directions, whatsoever. For a Jew, for example, the Zohar says, according to Kabbalah, learns the entire Torah by an angel before the baby is born. And then once the baby gets born, the angel goes, whap, smacks it, and he forgets everything. Right? So then you ask the question, well, why'd the angel come and teach him in the first place? What was the whole purpose of it? Right? So the whole purpose was that you have to come back and reacquire it. It can't be given to you as a gift. Right? You have to so now you have the ability to tune in if you want to. But it's an empty slate. Everybody comes in with an empty slate. It's just that that slate is given the wiring instructions to live. But that's it. There's nothing else. So on that slate, there will be no instructions. Okay, go do this, go do that, go find this. Now, does that mean that the soul cannot fathom anything else around it? No. But it does mean that whatever is around it, it's not going to happen from something in the past.
Okay, so you're making me think about something. And don't lose track of what you're saying. As you're talking, I'm thinking, what about, you said there shouldn't be a connection between the mind and the soul on memory basis. What is it then that causes someone like myself who has no, I don't know if I do or don't, but I'm assuming I don't have any Jewish DNA, but I'm so driven for some supernatural reason, some metaphysical whatever, driven to convert to Judaism. Why?
So that's a common question. The answer is that anyone who wants to convert and actually does convert and has this strong desire is because their soul was on Mount Sinai when God gave the Torah. Woohoo! Now, the problem is that, so don't go woohoo yet. The problem is that soul got lost. Now remember, someone asked me, how can a soul get lost?
Got it.
Well, it's very easy. If you have a Jewish soul that heard God speak on Mount Sinai, and let's say down the line they intermarried, right? If it was a male and he married a non-Jew, so his Jewish line is finished. Okay. That means that down the line, throughout all the generations, that soul is now a non-Jewish soul. Right, even though it's a Jew, it just kept coming back as a non-Jewish soul. So therefore, in order to reconnect to be wanting to become Jewish. So that's how they get there, because they had that connection on Mount Sinai. Now, even though they had that connection, it sort of got, it got lost. And now, when the non-Jewish person says, I have this strong desire to convert, and whatever it is, so that's only because of what happened on Mount Sinai, and the fact that they got lost along the way through intermarriage and assimilation. So now they have to go through this thing, they have to go through conversion. Otherwise, there should be absolutely no reason why any non-Jew, no offense, why any non-Jew would want to come to Judaism. It doesn't make any logical sense.
Right.
If you look at Jewish history, certainly in the time of David and King Solomon, where the Jews were on the top, they had the temple and everything else, God's presence was around, you're not allowed to convert because it takes away your free will. Right? At the time when the Messiah comes, same thing. They're going to be such miracles, you won't have free will, so therefore you have to convert. But you look at anybody today, and even if they live in a Jewish community and they still want to convert, then 100%, either they're the real deal or they're 100% crazy. Because if you look at the way Jews live and what they do, it's, we look really bad. And we are, like, on the bottom of the totem pole over here.
Yeah.
Right? No offense to totem pole. Right? We're on the bottom. So anyone who wants to convert, they have to either be the real deal or crazy, because it doesn't make, it wouldn't make any logical sense why somebody would want to. I mean, we've been gassed, we've been burned, all these different things.
Maybe I'm half and half. I went to a Jewish wedding with my dear friend Mordecai. He's such a tzaddik, but he paid for me and my family to come to Los Angeles to go to a Jewish wedding, and I'd never been to a Jewish wedding before, especially an Orthodox one, or shall I say, I won't even say just Orthodox. I'll say. It seemed like it was almost Hasidic, but I mean, it wasn't. It was just I think there was a bunch of yeshiva boys. Is really what it was. It was like 200 or 300 people there, maybe more than that, maybe 500. I don't know. It was but it was the most amazing thing I'd ever experienced in my life. It felt like my soul just went to Disneyland, and it was just I wished it hadn't stopped. It was that touching.
So what it is, it's a reconnection. You're reconnecting. You're reconnecting from what you lost, what your soul, how your soul, whatever, got lost, during that time.
Right.
Otherwise, why should you ever have a connection to such a thing? I mean,
right.
People in black hats wearing polyester, sweating like pigs at a dance floor. Like, why would you have a connection to that? They're like, someone told me, at my own wedding, it's like, wow, this smells like a locker room. But why should someone have a connection to that? It doesn't really make logical sense.
True.
It doesn't make logical sense why that should be. So the answer is that your soul, or anyone who wants to convert, their soul was on Mount Sinai. It just sort of got lost in the process.
Wow.
And now you're coming back to TORAH Talk to reconnect that.
All right, let's take this caller. Caller, thank you for being patient. Chillaxin is with us on the phone. If I've got the right person, don't know what the real name is. Please tell us your name, where you're calling from, if you're okay with that.
Hey, shalom, man. It's Bruce.
Bruce! Oh, my gosh. Bruce and the Almighty. Hey, guys, viewers right now, if you have not seen this testimony on TORAH Talk, you need to go to TORAHTalk.com and look at the look in the video archives and find a special guest and look for a video called Bruce. Bruce, sorry for the title, but it was the only thing that could stick with this whole program. Bruce and the Almighty. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Bruce, man, it's good to hear your voice again. Man, how are you?
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Oh, doing well.
Wow,
yeah, shalom to both you and Rabbi Chaim. I appreciate both of you. I know I bug you guys a lot with a lot of questions.
That's okay. That's what we're here
off
for.
Air and on air.
That's why.
But so I was just thinking about the Kabbalah, understanding of the soul and how it goes through different bodies, and and it's trying to get up to Hashem. And I was just thinking, I was like, well, whenever we get all the way back, up to Gan Eden, are we going to remember all these lives, or is it just going to be our last one? So if you can answer that, Rabbi, I'd appreciate it.
Now, let me add to that, Bruce, because your question opens up a whole can of worms. Are we going to remember all of our? I mean, like for me, unfortunately, I've been married 3 times. Okay, am I going to have these memories or even be connected in the Olam Haba with the other 2? I hope not. Hopefully the one I'm with now is the best one. She has 17 years of just tolerating this guy. She deserves all the credit. So, yeah. So, man, that's a really, really great question, man. I'm glad you called in, Bruce. Do you want to? Do you have anything else you want to ask Rabbi before we disconnect?
Well, no. That's another good topic to talk about is the Bereshit, basically the soulmate.
Right.
I've read something where basically 2 souls are up in the world of souls, and basically brought down to the earth, and then basically told to find each other, and then when you connect, you feel this connection. And so, yeah, that's another question: is are we going to be with our Bereshit up there, or how does all of that work? So, thank
Bruce,
you very much, Rabbi. I appreciate it.
Excellent. Thanks so much.
Bruce, thanks for calling in, man. We'll keep in touch. We have to get on the phone again sometime soon, okay?
All right, definitely.
Okay.
All right, shalom to both of you.
Shalom.
Right, bye.
Thanks.
Shalom.
Bye. Oh, that's awesome. Love that guy. His family is such an awesome family, man. It's cool. And their daughter, oh my gosh, she's got the voice of like an angel. I mean, I guess music kind of runs in their family, but their daughter's got a really, really amazing voice. Oh, wow. So that's cool. Okay. So, Rabbi, well, hey, you know what? Put that on the bird. I want to know what this next question is, okay? But before you go too far, you have to answer Bruce's question first. Got it? Okay. We're taking your call now, even though we haven't answered the previous caller's question yet. What is your name? Where are you calling from?
Jay from Alabama.
Jay from Alabama. How are you?
Hey, buddy. What's up?
Man, it's good to hear your voice again, man. What's your question for Rabbi?
Well, I was listening to your conversation about souls.
Yes.
And that's a subject I've been interested in for years and years. And I don't agree with, like, Jehovah's Witnesses probably on barely anything except their idea of a soul, meaning nothing more than a person, as in, how many people perished on this shipwreck, 11 souls, meaning person.
Okay.
So I guess my question is, what is a soul? And
that's a really good question. What is
and how
a soul?
come scientists have never found any evidence of a soul?
Whoa, dude. What did you eat for dinner, man? That's a really great set of questions.
You guys aren't going to sleep tonight. It's a good thing it's morning for me. I got no problem. But if it's nighttime for you guys, then
man, that's really cool. So why no scientific?
Hey, I guess I'm one of those people that just think too much. You know what I mean?
You know what? That's why you're here, though. So keep thinking that way, dude. Jay, thank you for calling in.
Put away that burger. Come on.
Jay, thanks, man. Let's hang up.
I appreciate your time, guys. I'm going to hang up and listen, okay?
Sounds great, brother. Thank you, man. Shalom, shalom.
Thanks.
Okay, I'm writing these down because the phone keeps ringing. We're going to keep answering. And if we don't get to all the questions tonight, we'll flow these things over on the next week, okay? So,
all right, let's go to the first question.
Okay, go to the first question, and while I'm writing, please restate the questions, 2 questions, to the audience, if you don't mind.
I didn't write it down. First question was about what your soul is going to remember. Right?
Second question is, if you're married 3 times, do you only know your first woman you get? Okay, good. All right.
Right. The soul. So the short, simple answer is that the soul is going. Your what you're made up of doesn't change. It may not remember. It may not remember in this world what it did previously while it's in a body. While again, as far as I understand, that soul is going, once it's a pure soul without a body, it'll remember what it went through as a soul, not in a body. So in other words, if it came back 3 times, once the soul finally, hopefully, gets fixed up and it has its position in the Garden of Eden, it should remember everything that it went through. Now, when it comes to, let's say, more than one wife, or something like that, as he pointed out, as Bruce pointed out, very true, that we are half a soul. So, imagine that, we have to go seemingly around China to find that other half. So, in my case, for instance, I was convinced, beyond the shadow of a doubt, I would never marry an American. I went 6,000 miles away, and guess who I married? An American. So it's like God's irony, as my wife always says. Like, you couldn't have married an Israeli because they wouldn't understand half the things you're saying. It's always a reference to something else. So, which may be true, but a person is complete. They're two halves of a soul, right? So you have to find your other half. If you don't find your other half, or you mess up the other half of soul that you are married to, right? So there are repercussions. There are consequences of who you might meet, and and reconnecting with somebody else. That's for sure. So someone mentioned last week, which I guess is a follow up to this, is that who am I going to go back to? When resurrection comes, am I going to be my first wife? If I'm married twice, I go to the first one or the second one. It seems that when a person gets buried and a person dies, they get buried with the second wife, not the first one. So, that's probably what happens in most people's lives.
Okay.
I mean, you can tell me that's different, but I don't think so. So, in other words, there's a total cutoff from the first wife. If let's say a person's widowed, right? We'll make it easy. A person's widowed, gets remarried, right? Then that wife dies or whatever, and then the husband dies. So he'll go back with that second wife. He'll go after the one who was previously with him. Why? Because the first one is totally disconnected. That even though they were two halves and they were together and they were supposed to be together, it doesn't matter. They are now disconnected. And because they're now disconnected, they're not going back to the same one. Right? He won't go back to the first one, he'll go back to the to the previous one. So if someone gets divorced, it should be the same thing. Right? Obviously, that soul doesn't want to have any connection to the previous soul. It didn't work out, whatever reason. Whatever reason didn't work out. So whoever you're left with, usually that should be the case, because there's a total disconnect. There's an absolute total disconnect between the two. So, I hope that answered
right.
I hope that answers the question.
Okay, do me a favor. This is not what I'm fixing to do right now is not along the protocol of the format of the show. However, you had mentioned earlier that one of your students who was watching and may have a question. They are watching, but they're not going to call in. They actually put their question online. But it doesn't have to do specifically with the show. However, it will bless all the people here because it has to do with Rosh Hashanah. And that's one thing I'm going to try to do more often as we get into the holy days, is have more shows addressing the holy days by various teachers like yourself. So Dewey, pardon me if I don't say this name right, Ollinger. Okay. It says, I'm a student of Rabbi Coffman. This is a little off topic. I apologize. The question about Rosh Hashanah: why does Hashem tell us that the new year starts in the month of Aviv in Leviticus 23:5? And I have heard so many arguments on this. All of them, I was going to say most of them, but that would be a lie. All of them were by Messianics, and I'm not pinning this guy's Messianic. That's not my point, but it's a great question. But what happens is, in the Messianic circle, is they completely reject Orthodox Judaism on every level you could possibly imagine, even though they do things that are only found in the oral Torah, like wearing tzitzit and wearing the yarmulke and the talis and all this other stuff. So his question is very legitimate. It's a really great question. Why is it that we have multiple New Years according to things? Now, a friend of mine, Lon Cherry Holmes, is a dear friend of mine, ex-Messianic. He was born in the Messianic movement, a very unique case. Most people are Christian, they moved to Messianic. He was actually born a Messianic and left, and now he's in the conversion to Judaism. He had mentioned that currently in our United States, for example, we have New Year's for everything, just like you have the New Year for trees in Judaism, right? Well, we have the fiscal New Year. We have the New Year for this. We have a New Year for that. we also have the 12-month New Year. So is there a connection here as to why there's multiple New Year timestamps in the Bible, and what do we trust? What's the whole point behind all of it? Why change it to begin with? That would be my question. Now, I'm not trying to superimpose Lou's question, but if you could cover the both, that would be great. And again, I know this is off topic, but I think this is probably.
Do you want me to cover the other question about the soul and why?
Yes, we'll come back. In fact, that's a great point. I will actually go ahead now and write Dewey's question down. And if we have time, if you have time, I'll take as much time as you like. If you need another hour, I'm good with that.
Okay.
Take your time. Let's go back, finish up Bruce's questions, and then we'll move into Jay from Alabama, and then we'll take Dewey's. Okay.
All right. So the other question was. So wait, what was that? What Bruce's other question was?
Marriage, wives. That. Well, actually, that was my question. His was, if we're brought back into this world 10 times over a period of 10,000 years.
Yeah, so I mentioned that. So
right.
the soul should remember it as the pure soul, not in the body. So if a person
you
came
closed
back
up on that, right?
Three times, five times.
Yeah.
The soul.
The last
when it gets its place in Gan Eden. In paradise, should remember
the last one.
Should remember all the different things that it went through.
Oh, you mean through
in the body it can't. As the soul it can.
Oh, okay, got it. Okay, so that does make sense. That makes sense. Okay, because the whole reason why it came back multiple times was for the very purpose to fulfill something it didn't fulfill the first time. So it seems like it would need to have a connection with all those events.
But remember the analogy. The analogy was it's attached to kryptonite, right? So it's like it's encased.
We're disabling it, basically.
Right, exactly. You're encased in a car that is just holding it. That's it. So and that car is empty. There's nothing there, so it can't. According to that, it can't remember anything.
I just had something I need to share with you. It's really interesting for all you pet owners out there. I'm gonna tell you something that may make you look at your animal differently. We've had, my wife loves cats. We have a few cats. The cat we have now. And the cats we had before. It's really weird when I'm walking around the house barefooted. The cat, when I walk around, the cat makes eye contact with me. But the moment that, I know this sounds really creepy, but it's really weird. It's really true though. But when I put my shoes on, the cat totally doesn't even care that I'm there. All that cat focuses on are those shoes. It's like I jumped in a car and or an airplane and flew across the nation, right? This cat, every single time I walk past my cat wearing shoes, the cat is scared because it's not me now. What are these shoes doing here? Oh my God, these shoes are alive. They're around me. In our limited understanding and capabilities of perceiving godly things, I think that there is a similar parallel there. I think that there's a connection there somehow. When I take off my shoes, literally I could put them on and watch the cat stare at my shoes. Walk past the cat, freaks her out. So to take my shoes off and back in my bare feet again, the cat's looking at my face again. I get it now. I'm getting more and more familiar with it. But there is something really strange with how our mind works regarding certain things. And with our intellectual mind that we have as humans, we've never been to heaven. We've never experienced the Olam Haba. We've never fully experienced a reincarnation per se. We can't wrap our heads around it, but it's real. You can see it in the evidence around you.
Right. So according to that, a person, could come back in an inanimate object or an animate object, right? Could come back could come back as a cat, could come back as a stone.
Now, not physically, right?
No. I'm saying
the soul could just land wherever it lands. It's not like you're going to come back and you're going to be a dog or a cat or a tick.
But God can put you in these things for different,
right.
Okay. For different reasons. So, that's not uncommon. That's certainly not uncommon. So they may sense something that certainly we don't. And, the obvious question is that cats are programmed DNA. Animals cannot go outside their nature. If they can't go outside their nature and they do things that are weird, so there's something else going on, but, we don't, we can't fathom that. As my Rebbe always says, I've never met anyone been in that world and come back.
Right, got it.
So, we don't, we don't know, which actually gets to Bruce's question, and that is in a roundabout way, and that is, how come we don't, scientists have never come up with, like what the soul is. How come that is? Well, there are plenty of things science hasn't.
That's Jay's question. Yeah, good point, Jay.
That, it doesn't mean that doesn't exist.
Right.
You have to keep in mind, as we mentioned at the beginning, that the soul comes from the world of souls. It comes from God himself. If it's a spiritual entity, a 100% spiritual entity trapped in this box, trapped in this car, so to speak, how in the world could a physical body in the physical world feel what this soul is?
Yeah.
In other words, I can make a blessing, or I even say better, I can watch my Rebbe make a blessing and absolutely believe God exists in this world, just by seeing how his head contorts. It's like blood vessels like coming out of his head and everything else, and what his intention is and when he's doing it. You want to tell me that God doesn't exist in this person's body? I mean, it absolutely does. I mean, he's a spiritual being in a physical body, no question about it. Can I pinpoint in that body, where the soul is? I mean, when I get smacked upside the head, maybe, but in general, you cannot pinpoint that because it's something that's intangible.
Right.
You can take a physical thing and you can make it into a spiritual act. I can take an apple and make a blessing on it. I can make it into a spiritual act. Can I physically grab that spiritual act right now and all the repercussions of what I did? Absolutely not. It's an impossibility. You can't do it.
Right.
But you just witnessed something like hearing the shofar, like shaking your lulav when you shake your lulav in all directions, right? You're doing something that is really a spiritual act. You say, okay, now explain the spiritual act. Explain what the spirituality is within it.
Can I jump in?
Yeah.
Because you're painting a really good picture for me that this may sound silly, but most everything I say sounds silly. But the way that you're describing things would be like for a person to say, I want my neshama, my nefesh, even my animal soul to connect with my brain next life would almost be the same equivalence as it would be when you put on a pair of shoes or mud boots. Let's go mud boots. You put on a pair of mud boots and you would want your physical brain, your intellect to feel what your mud boots are feeling when they squish through the mud, or when you're stepping through cow manure and does my mud boots smell this awful smell? There's no connection there. In a sense of, so for us to be able to wrap our head around that is not as easy as we would think. We want to think, and again, this is a struggle, even for me, with the whole idea of reincarnation. Even though you're teaching us how to perceive it, there's something in the back of our minds that thinks reincarnation. Oh my God, I can't believe I could be a cow next life, or I could be another person who may not do well, and I'm responsible for all this stuff. There's so many thousands of thoughts that comes along with this whole reincarnation thing. Even though you're teaching us how we should perceive it, it's really, really hard to wrap our minds around. Right. There's no way I could possibly feel right now what this black shirt feels on these stinky armpits. It's not something that's possible.
No, 100%. When we speak about the next world, about Olam Haba, for instance, it's as expansive as the entire universe, and it's something that our minds can't fathom. So try and explain. This is an example. Try and explain to a blind person, what it means to see in color.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
Try and mime it. Like you can't do it. It's you can explain it as much as you want. You can break it down. You can understand it intellectually, but you can't touch it.
I have a friend who's blind. He's 50. I think he's 53, 55. Been blind. He's never ever once seen. Period. And I asked him one time. This is back when I was Messianic, but I was very sincere about this. I was like, if you could be healed. Actually, the Messianic thing had nothing to do. Really has no relevance whatsoever. But the point is, think about what I'm fixing to say. I asked him. I said, if right now, 56 years, 53 years later, You've been blind your entire life. If I had a magic pill that said, if you take this pill, you could see for the first time in your life, and I asked him, I said, would you want to? I asked him that question because I thought about that question myself. And you know what he told me? It was really, really confirming to my suspicions, where he goes, you know what? He goes, I don't think I would want to. There's so many things that we perceive in this world that we take for granted, and so many things that we take for granted that aren't even real, like, for example, reincarnation. We think we understand it because we heard some idiot back when we were Christians saying, you're going to come up as a Hindu cow or something. We think we're all of a sudden we're scholars with this whole thing. We don't have the slightest clue other than what, 3,500 years of Judaism teaches on it. That's the closest we're going to get to find out what it really is.
Right.
Where are we going to put our trust?
You can't, as much as we learn and as much as we do, it still doesn't answer up like in a physical way.
Right.
We can say, you can come back because, if you do this, you can come back as a dog. If you do this, you come back as, as something else. And then you start looking at this dog. It's like, who are you? What's your name?
Right.
We can understand it, intellectually, but, on a physical level,
I think get you bigger.
On a physical level, it's very, it's very, very hard. Matt, I'll give an example. You come to Rosh Hashanah, and you hear all these tunes, and you go through the prayer book, and it's all about who's not going to be here next year, who hasn't been here, and who died by fire, by water, by all these different things. It's all about judgment, But when you're there, and this actually gets into this topic also, because when you're there, the Zohar says that if you feel this ability to cry, now most people are pretty much have a heart of stone, so we don't feel anything, but if you're in tune a little bit with your soul, and this tune's being sung, and you're really into it, and you're really enjoying it, and it's bringing you to a different level, all of a sudden tears can come flowing down. Mm-hmm. So the Arizal, Rabbi Isaac Luria, says that why is that? Why should that happen? So he says, why it happens? Because your file right now has been opened upstairs, and that's your soul's reaction.
Oh, wow.
So if you feel that ability to cry, maybe like a drop or 2 or 3 tears comes out, that means that your soul's getting fried. I mean, that means that you're being opened up, and that your soul's so embarrassed. That's what it does, because it feels it. It absolutely feels it. So that's a real thing, but now intellectualize that. Now you go, you're tired. You've been in synagogue a long time, or maybe it's the beginning, whatever it is. You're tired. You're going through all this, and it's an intense time. Now all of a sudden, you feel this overwhelming fear or dread, and all of a sudden the tears start to come, mm-hmm. and you feel something. Now, explain that to somebody. Explain to someone, who's never had a whatchamacallit, right? They don't make whatchamacallits anymore, right? But, they forgot the name.
What you eating, Luke? Whatchamacallit?
What's that name, right? So explain to somebody.
I can't believe you've even seen that commercial.
Who's never tasted a whatchamacallit, right. But you absolutely crave it, desire it, and it puts you in a different planet. Okay, that's a little bit of a jump. Right? But if you have that, you have that feeling. Imagine, I'll give you another example. There are stories of soldiers, secular soldiers, Israelis, that come to the Western Wall. And when they come to the Western Wall, what's the first thing that happens to them? They burst out in tears.
Down. Right. Yep, for
Why?
sure.
It's just a wall. They don't do it in the Wall of China. Trust me. Why by the Western Wall? That's the most intense place spiritually in this world. And the soul's like, ah! The soul goes bananas.
Right.
Because it's such a strong experience that the soul goes absolutely crazy because it feels what the reality is.
Yep.
So explain that in physical terms. You can't.
Okay.
It's not something tangible. Now, when something like that happens, you want to tell me that the soul's not, that science hasn't figured out what the soul is. Okay. Now explain to me why that happened. It's an overcome of emotion. Thank you very much. Where does emotion come from? Why? You've been eating pork and whatever your entire life. All of a sudden you're going to tell me you come to this holy place and you actually feel something and you burst out crying? That doesn't make any logical sense. So that shows you're more than what your body is. Can I prove it? No, can't prove it. Right? But we've just mentioned two examples, right? That a person feels something and it's beyond himself. I can tell you that a few weeks ago that I spent Shabbos by my Rebbe. I saw him make Kiddush Friday night, and I thought I was like in a different world. I was like in a different planet. Can I explain that tangibly? No. Anybody who would have been there and would have seen it would have said, wow, this is intense. This is the real deal. But explain it, put it in words. You can't. Doesn't mean it doesn't exist. And that's, and scientists will only say, I understand what I see right in front of my face. Hey, what's that wart? What is that? I can only explain,
right,
in physical terms. Supernatural, like Amalek, they don't go beyond the supernatural. They don't believe in the supernatural. So, how do they explain things? Okay, it's chant. Things happen different ways. But these other things, how in the world can you put it in words? You can't. Does that mean it doesn't exist? Because science hasn't proven it? No. Absolutely not.
Okay. So let's tell us, according to Judaism, in your best layman's terms, what is a soul?
So the soul is what makes us, it makes up who we are. It is the essence of who we are. We think when a person says, who am I? They go like this. Well, why are you going like this? It's inside. It's not just the physical body. So
can I ask it this way? This way? We have the mind, the soul, and the body, right? Would it be like the body is like the computer screen? The mind is like the operating system, and versus the hard drive. Does it kind of work that way, or is there another way? I mean, give it to us in such a practical level that we can all of viewers, no matter 15-year-old, can understand this.
All right, let's try and make it easy.
Okay.
The body is the case. The soul, the soul needs to be nourished. It needs spiritual nourishment in order for the soul to come about. So the soul is all the information, is all the programming to tune in to something not physical. Now you're going to say, okay, what does that mean? That means that there's no possibility whatsoever a person should want to have any closeness to God or anything if they didn't have anything inside of themselves. Now, how do you get that? So you have to nurture it. I mean, Christians learn somewhat. I mean, most of them don't, and most of them are ignorant. But, you have to nurture that. So the only way to nurture that is by what God tells you to do.
By the way, just for all the Christians watching, if you're watching this or you're watching it in the future, ignorant doesn't mean stupid. It means lacking information. Just to clarify.
Okay. So the soul itself wants to attach itself to the Creator. Now the problem is it's stuck in a body. And the fact that it's stuck in the body doesn't want it. So the only reason, now, to explain it in layman's terms, the only reason you have any connection to anything spiritual, meaning godliness, whatever, however that manifests itself, is only because you have that inside yourself. It's part of your inherent DNA. So all your thoughts, again, you start with a blank slate. So it's a question of what you put into it. But the spiritual side of yourself can only come because the soul's inside you. I don't know if that explains. I'm not sure. I'm not sure that does it justice. It's it's a little bit hard to put in words. But as you mentioned before, why would I have this desire to convert or get closer to spirituality? It's because your soul wants to be nurtured. Other people, put all this garbage on their soul, so they basically destroy it. They basically, a person can be so steeped in garbage, you need a snorkel in order to breathe, right? So your spiritual side will not come out. You'll be apathetic. Unfortunately, most American Jews are apathetic. Probably the main reason is because they don't keep kosher. That's what dulls the spirit of the soul. That's what really dulls the soul, and they just don't care. They're just not interested. Someone who's eaten pork their whole life, talk to them about spirituality. It's almost an impossibility. So the more garbage you put on top of it, the less likely it is going to shine. I mean, it probably won't unless you have a nuclear bomb go off. Try and start a Jeep with a 9-volt. It's not going to happen. It's an absolute impossibility. So therefore, if it didn't have this spiritual connection, i.e., that God put this soul in your body, you'd have no connection to spirituality whatsoever. Now, you could ask the question, so why do people go in different directions? Some become Christian, some are Muslim, some are this. So it's dependent on a number of things. People have free choice. They can go whatever direction that they want. But the only reason any of them or any of us, meaning Jews, are going to have any connection whatsoever is because God put that spiritual DNA in us. Otherwise, you'd have absolutely no connection whatsoever. I don't know. If you want to follow up with that, I don't know. I'm not sure how much clearer that can be. But nobody in this world seemingly will have any connection whatsoever to spirituality than have a soul. Okay. It's an impossibility. Now, we mentioned before, a Jew gets taught the entire Torah, so it's more of a connection. If they're, educated properly and brought up properly, they'll have a closer connection to Torah. It won't look so foreign. But someone, who never had that education, why should they have any spiritual connection at all? Right,
gotcha. Yeah.
They shouldn't. They're busy watching, baseball and doing other, going to movies and doing other stuff. They have absolutely no connection. So God gives you the juice for it. It's part of our spiritual DNA. The question is how you extract it. How it's nourished and how it's used in this world. And if it's used properly, then we can produce unbelievable spiritual people in the right way. It can also be abused. You can find other things that are wrong and get involved in other things, but God's going to give you free will for that. But in either case, without having some level of spiritual DNA, you're not going to go anywhere. You're just going to be stuck in this physical world as a physical being and, worrying about what you're going to eat for lunch because you're in the middle of breakfast. Right? That always bothered me. Why are you speaking about lunch? You're in the middle of breakfast. Because people are very shallow and they don't care. And their soul has killed them. Their body has killed them.
Do me a favor.
They have not allowed the soul to shine whatsoever. And therefore, they're more of a physical being, even though they have the soul inside.
Okay, I'm going to reach out to the women out there. Now, the women and men who've ever played around in the kitchen. I'm trying to figure out these different connection points so we can actually wrap our heads around things, okay? So my thought on this is like the soul, mind, body, okay? The soul, and again, laugh if you want or correct me, I would prefer the soul, mind, body. 1, 2, 3. Soul, mind, body. Soul would be like the oven in your kitchen. The mind would be like a recipe. And the body would be like the product that you produce. The soul being the supreme being, meaning that the oven is capable of making the most magnificent thing in the world, right? Mm-hmm. Your mind is what creates what you do in your playground. For me, am I thinking about Torah? Am I thinking about porn? Big difference, right? Right. And the body, the product, what does that produce? is that kind of right? Is it a little bit off? Is it a lot off?
So the body, the body is about, it's the casing. The soul with the body makes the body function. Now, the body has influence because it comes from the physical world. The soul, if it's doing what it should do in theory, should just nullify the body because it's so powerful. But it's trapped.
Now, wait, you said the soul, if it's doing what it needs to be doing. I thought the mind, or the body and the mind was what's responsible of allowing the soul
both.
to do.
Again, you have
right?
The soul itself controls the body.
Okay.
If the soul controls the body, then what you have is, it makes the body function. Without the soul, the body doesn't function. Now that it's part of the body, it does not take over the body.
Right. It can't.
Because the body traps it and it can't. So that means that the physical body has influence over the soul. If the soul is as all-powerful as we know it, the body should have no influence whatsoever. But the problem is the body traps it. So the body puts all these ideas into the soul, and the soul can choose to act on it or not act on it.
So this is like a Gan Eden situation with Adam and Eve. I mean, the soul versus the human nature is like the free will at battle with what's right.
Right. That's it. So they have a choice. No, but they made it worse because they ate from the tree. And so now they have that battle all the time.
Oh, man.
That battle is always within them. That's why, God got really ticked off and they changed the purpose of what creation was for.
Okay.
That man has to go through death because of it.
Okay, I want to get to Dewey's, one of your students. By the way, students, we're going to pause right now. Rabbi, tell everybody again. I'm going to do this every week. You may not like this, but I want this to be out there every week so that if we ever have new viewers, they know what you do when you're not blowing up my system on Tanakh Talk. So tell, for any new viewers who are potentially watching or will watch, tell them about your what you're doing with your conversion classes, with everything online, because you offer some really tremendous resources on several different playing fields. So if you would tell the viewers right now a little bit about where you're at and what you're doing.
Okay, so I give conversion classes. People interested want to convert to Judaism. Obviously, it's going to be an Orthodox conversion. I do everything in my power. Anyone who wants to come to Israel to make sure that it's accepted here. I also have classes for Noahides. People don't want to convert because they still want to eat pork or whatever the case is, or they can't convert. So they, that meets once a week, and we go through the Torah, seeing what applies to them, what doesn't apply to them. Etc. And I have a class that has nothing to do with conversion or Noahides, which I call Intro to Kabbalah, which is based on the book Derech Hashem, The Way of God by Rav Chaim Lutzato. And that is basically we speak about divine providence, individual providence, how it works, prophecy, why God created the world, what the purpose of man is. I mean, a lot of this information that we're giving over now is really very much steeped in that book. So even though I called it Intro to Kabbalah, I'm not, turning people into frogs, and I am trying to bring these high lofty ideas down, basically down to this world. Nonetheless, it definitely gives insights into, what we're doing here and what the purpose is. And, like I said, that has nothing to do with conversion. Anyone interested can certainly contact me about that.
Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. Thank you. Okay, now moving forward with your student Dewey, and again, I didn't write his full name, but he says I'm a student of Rabbi Chaim Coffman. The question is Rosh Hashanah, and again, I mentioned earlier that there's a big battle in the Messianic cult that. Yeah, right. I just said that. That deals with the battle between, do we trust Judaism, Orthodoxy, do we trust the oral law? But that's not his question. His question is very valid in the sense that why do we have several mentionings of what the new year is? The one in Torah, and then we have what comes across in Judaism as what we should be calling Rosh Hashanah.
So the Mishnah in Rosh Hashanah speaks about 4 different heads of the year. So one of them is the head of the new year for us, meaning in the physical world for mankind. We're going to start counting from Rosh Hashanah, because Rosh Hashanah is really the creation of man and signifies a new year. There are other times also. There's a Rosh Hashanah for the trees, which we hold is on Tu B'Shvat,
Right.
Which basically is when the trees come back to life from being dormant, through the winter. At the same time, so you have that, and you have the new year for other things. So for Rosh Hashanah itself, for instance, the new year, for the year, so things go in a cycle. So once the year goes by, there's a rejuvenation, right? God looks at the world, how he sees it, what's going to be, how he's going to judge it. It's like a rejuvenation. God renews the world every day. That's what we say in our prayers in the morning. Like, in positive language, not past tense, in present tense. So the reason is because if God takes his eye off the world for a split second, so the world's going to go back to the original chaos, Genesis chapter 1, verse 2. That's, that'll look like the back of the Led Zeppelin album, and that'll be pretty bad because I'll be dead. So that's obviously not good. But, the world, goes back, God has a connection every day. If he takes his mind off it, then the world gets destroyed. So it's brought down that every day of creation stands for 1,000 years. So you got every day of creation, not including the seventh day. So you got 6 days of creation, which is 6,000 years. Within that time, God has to bring the Messiah one way or another, whether we deserve it or not. It's going to come one way or another within that amount of time. So each year that goes by, so you need you need years to go by, and when 1 year ends and the next year starts, so it's on a totally different plane. Exactly, however, God is going to see it, and God is going to judge it. So that's why you certainly need a new year. It's definitely a rejuvenation. What happens this year, it's not necessarily going to have a connection to what happened last year. There will be ramifications and repercussions of what happened last year that will potentially fall during the year, but this year's a new slate.
Right.
Right? Should have, all kinds of different things going on. It's not going to be the same. Year in and year out, things change. Right? Things definitely don't stay the same. So you ask me, well, how does it all work? Well, if I knew that, I wouldn't be wasting my time right now. It's, you're looking in the bigger global picture in God's mind, which man cannot understand. I gave a class this week on Derech Hashem. One of the things I mentioned, that whatever trials and tribulations that a person goes through, we can't understand why. It's a decree. Different things happen to us, and we reflect on them, we act on them, we make mistakes or whatever the case is. But at the end of the day, whatever happens to us, we're probably in a million years never going to figure out why until we're this pure soul. We can't understand why. So at the end of the day, whatever difficulty, everybody listening to the show is probably a big difficulty listening to me. But whatever, now you know why you're in this world to suffer. Anyway, but you're going to realize, you should realize that whatever we go through and whatever trials and tribulations we have, it's 100% an absolute decree. We have free will, don't get me wrong.
Right. We
have free will.
Right.
But it's an absolute decree in how we're going to react and what we're going to do. So, why did God make it this way? So, okay, that's a good question. If you go back to Leviticus, the Rosh Hashanah is the new year, but it's in the 7th month. Rosh Hashanah is not in the first month. The first month we start from Nisan. What holiday is the month of Nisan? Is Passover. The first month is the month of redemption, when the Jewish people come out of Egypt. The Talmud asked the question, right? The Talmud asked why you start counting the month from Nisan and not from Tishrei. Tishrei is the creation of man, right? Not the creation of Jews. Don't make the mistake. It's the creation of all mankind.
Right. Gotcha.
Okay. It's not like, Well, we came on the face of the map. Everything happened before that. There was no time, right? Like before JC came on the scene. What happened before that? Nothing. What do you mean nothing? Nothing happened. There's no time. There's no nothing. Right? Muslim, same thing. Judaism, it's the creation of man. So that is the fundamental question. Why should we start counting from Tishrei? So so what's the answer? So everything has to happen in its appropriate time. Passover has to be in the spring. It cannot be in the fall. Sukkot has to be in the fall. Now the problem is we go through a lunar calendar. So the lunar calendar is about 11 days and change, different from a solar calendar. So that means that every so often we have to make amends on that calendar to have an extra month, to have a leap year, in order that all the holidays fall out in the right time. So the Muslims also go according to the lunar calendar, but Ramadan can be in the winter, can be in the spring, can be in the fall, can be in the summer. They don't make any emendations. All right, that's their problem. So they don't make any emendations. But we have to, because Sukkot, when a person goes into a sukkah, you can't go in the sukkah in the summer. Why can't he go in the summer? Because maybe he's going into the sukkah because it's for shade. Right? He's doing it for shade because it's so hot. Right? Therefore, if you go in the sukkah in the appropriate time in the fall, no one in the right mind is going to think you're going outside into a sukkah because you want to go into the shade.
Right.
Most places it's cold. Right? It can get quite cold. Certainly in some places. So the calendar has to be adjusted. If the calendar wouldn't be adjusted, the holidays would all be off. We'd be celebrating the holidays on the wrong day, and that you can't happen. So they had to figure out a way in order to do that, in order to fix the calendar. So there are a number of times within like 19 years, they're like, I don't know, 6, 7 times or something, that you can have the calendar that you'll have a leap year. And that's why. That's exactly why. So Nisan has to be in the spring. Sukkot has to be in the fall. And when you're talking about redemption, redemption should not be at the beginning of the new year. That's not when, chronologically when, certainly when it happened. So the new year has to be with the start of creation. It absolutely has to start with creation of the world. It's just not going to be, it's not going to be in the first, in the first month.
Okay. All right. Fair enough. So would it be fair to say that there is a similarity in the way that we do things now in the U.S. with different, like there's a new year for taxes, there's a new year for schools, there's also the new year for partying. that was a joke. That's what seems to be what people take it for. So is it kind of the same thing? There's different sections of New Year's for different titles. Is that kind of how it works overall?
Well, keep in mind, everything has, if you talk about, let's say, New Year of the Trees, for instance, it's God bringing back to life the trees so they can bear fruit. I wouldn't say it's like a new year for tax season. That's not. You're talking about a physical. You're talking about a spiritual idea that's manifested in the physical way. So by anything else, by go by the secular calendar, New Year's, it gets sloshed and stay up late and do all kinds of things, and whatever it is. I mean, that has no place over here. That's a new year for destruction, basically. That has absolutely no place whatsoever. And in Judaism, you're talking about a spiritual act that's that's a manifestation that gets manifested in in the physical world. So, that's a whole different thing. And each, that Mishnah continues and says that each time period has different things that are judged. For instance, on Sukkot, we get judged for water. How much water, like the land of Israel, is going to get, or we depend on rain for water. We don't have any other way to get water because most of the country is made out of limestone. Limestone basically, makes water evaporate at a much quicker level. On Sukkot, it's for water. Passover is for grain or for fruits, actually. So you have other holidays for different, different things that are judged. It's a spiritual influence that we have to pray for that should manifest itself in a physical way. Now, obviously, if we don't do what we're supposed to do, then there have been a number of years here in Israel that there's been drought. Been serious problems with rain. And I remember one year, like 4 or 5 years, it's just like very little rain. So in the Sea of Galilee, they just kept taking the red line where you're supposed to pump from, and it kept going lower and lower.
Wow.
So it was like almost impossible to do that. And then one year it went up like, 3.5 meters or something. I mean, a huge amount. There's like a huge amount of rain, that we got, and it got made up in like, there was overflow, to a certain extent. So, we do what we're supposed to do. As we say in the Shema every day, God will bring rain in His proper season. If you don't do what we're supposed to do, the rain won't come. There'll be famine. There'll be difficulties. There'll be all kinds of things. So it's all about us. We have the power to make or break. So in that sense, you say, well, on the last day of Sukkot, which for us is Simchas Torah, everywhere else is Shmini Atzeres, the last day we pray for rain. We pray that the dew should come, and then
in
2 weeks
its
later,
proper time.
In
its proper season, in its proper time.
Right, in its proper season, right. So 2 weeks later, we pray for rain. So the reason is because, people went to Jerusalem to, celebrate the holiday, in the temple. In Jerusalem, they would have a time to get back where it didn't rain. Otherwise, if you're praying for rain, they're never going to come. Okay, let's go. And it's like pouring out. Like, who's going to want to go?
Right,
to the temple. So you start praying for rain, at that time. In the States, it's different. It's like in December. It's like December 4th or December 5th or something like that. But anyway, the idea is that everything should happen in its proper time. And it sounds kind of funny, but the reality is that when rain comes, why does rain come? Because we deserve it. I mean,
right.
If we don't pray well enough, it's not going to come. There are times that it doesn't come. But it has to come through because we pray for it. Not because in any way, shape, or form that, it's going to come by itself.
What's really...
It has to come because you asked for it.
Right. What's really interesting is I've always struggled with the idea with the church. They would say things like, praise God, we just got hit with 12 inches of rain. It was in the middle of the day. Well, in Judaism, correct me if I'm wrong, in Judaism, the best rain comes at night when it's not affecting people's work, their productivity. It also comes in the proper months and also in the proper doses. Right. So when in the States, we've got these preachers of these churches praying for rain, and all of a sudden it rains like a freaking monsoon. Right. And they think, thank God He answered our prayers. We must be doing something right. Do you realize that your land just got completely flooded and all your crops got completely totally toasted?
That's not a blessing.
No, that's not a blessing, but they think it is. That's what's really wild.
When we pray for rain, for instance, we say it should come in the right places. If the land of Israel gets rain in the mountains, that doesn't help anybody. Right. If it gets rain, in the desert, and it doesn't get rain in the Galilee where we need it, then that's also not good. Right. And it can't come in such abundance that livestock are killed, and we had that problem a number of years ago. Hundreds of livestock were killed, and there were other issues. That's not a blessing. It's like, I've been saved. I can see, and they walk in a pit. Come on, right? You can see things any way you want, but the way the Torah is going to tell you is, it's a blessing for the sole reason that it got in the right place, didn't kill anyone in the process.
At the right time.
At the right time, exactly.
Right. So there you go.
I just one other thing. I'll mention that I saw. I asked my everyone. It rained once here in the summer, and if it rains in the summer, when it's not supposed to, it's considered a curse. So I asked my Rebbe about it, and he grew up in England. So I said, is this a curse? Because, it rained. He goes, a couple drops? No, that's not rain. I grew up in England. He goes, that is not rain at all. Did you even, think about going inside because you were getting soaking wet? It's not rain. Drops. Wow. You're wet, but it's not rain.
Rabbi, you're so cute. Wait till you see this video. I'm rubbing your cheeks right now. Hey, you know what? It's been good. It's been a lot of fun. We covered a lot of territory tonight. I can't wait till future shows on this. Ladies and gentlemen, please go to TanakTalk.com. Look all the way up to the top right. You'll find a place called polls. If you will go there, you'll see a list of like 10 or 12 questions. Just pick which one is most interesting to you. We're going to add more. I'm probably going to have a list of like 100 by the time I'm done with it. And you can just pick those things. We'll use those polls to determine what the next topic is for here. I do believe, if I'm not mistaken, next week, Rabbi, correct me, we're going to do the oral law. Am I correct?
That sounds good. Right
Okay.
after, be right after Rosh Hashanah.
After Rosh
Right?
Hashanah.
So
Yes.
After Rosh Hashanah, so that'll be Wednesday. So next day is a fast day for me, but it won't matter. So that should not be a problem. I do want to just have this time a drop that next week's going to be a new year. So I want to wish everyone a happy and a healthy.
Awesome.
New year. People
Right.
should have plenty of livelihoods, be healthy. Etc. Have what they're, whatever they need, whatever they desire. And I want to give a big plug to, certainly to what you do, and tremendously appreciated, for people all around the world that, you're just bringing this light into their homes, and you should just 100% be blessed for everything that you do, for everybody, and that's what I wanted to say. You're
a good man. Thank you, Rabbi. And I really appreciate what you're doing here. You're doing something on this particular series that's not comfortable for a lot of people, not only to talk about, but also to listen to. We're going to be covering a lot of really crazy and wild topics. Some topics that you're going to see me in the future. You're going to post it, and I'm going to put the topic up. You're going to, oh my God, I can't believe William typed that. This stuff you need to learn about. You need to get. Okay, you've got to learn this stuff. It's stuff that people have questions on, but they're too afraid to ask because they think they're going to be shunned for it, or whatever the case may be. You just need to you've got to listen to it. You've got to figure out how to get this into your knowledge base so you can understand how to respond to others on this situation. So, Rabbi, thank you so very much for all of your work and all of your. This has been almost a 2-hour episode. This was actually a lot of fun. And thank you for all the viewers out there. Seriously, TanakTalk.com. Go there, subscribe to the Facebook page. The events page on the Tanakh Talk Facebook. You'll be able to see every event that I create, the moment I create it, and when I make changes for it as well. If we're going to be 15 minutes late, you'll be the first one notified because you will have subscribed. So, Rabbi, you're an awesome dude. Thanks, man. Appreciate everything you do, and I can't wait till next week. Well, the next show. Shalom, shalom to you and to everyone watching.
Shalom to everybody.
Shalom, shalom to everybody. And man, I just can't express my gratitude to all of you. Thank you so much. Shalom, shalom. Bye-bye.
זו הגדולה, השאיפה והכמיהה. חושבים דוברים לובשים בכל האופנים, זה טבעם של אנשים שונים. נזכור בסוף כולנו שותפים, חשוב תמיד